So it's become a stereotype at this point, right? The small town in the US losing its factory. It's the subject of movies, but this time it really hits home for me, and it got me thinking about small towns in general and the fate of small towns in the US. This is my small town, Black Duck, Minnesota. Right now, I'm down in the west of the Twin Cities, but Black Duck is way up north. It's only about an hour south of Canada, and it's a very small town. It has 700 people. Surrounding the town is the industry that, really put the population there, the logging especially, but farming as well. And in 1980, a local resident named Ron Anderson began to create window decor uh, and built up this company selling these window decor products and built it up into Anderson Fabrics. It would become a real giant of industry for northern Minnesota, at least especially for Black Duck. 300 employees in a town of only 700 people or so, 700 to 800 people. Um, I don't know what it was about their maybe some patented manufacturing process or style or I don't know what it was, but they got so well known for their window decor that they actually sold some to the Obama White House. Here's a picture of some workers from their Facebook page. It became just obviously a real mainstay for the community. They employed up to 300 people, and for a town of 700, that's remarkable. It does, of course, render the town a bit reliant on this factory, but for the many years the factory existed, it provided scholarships for the students. It brought in a lot of people from outside of Black Duck to come to at least stay there and work and leave. So people were eating lunch there. People were um, who lived there, who moved there for work, would send their kids to the school, support local businesses, etc. And it was 300 people when I was growing up there, and it was down to about 115. So the writing was a bit on the wall, I guess. And in 2021, they sold Anderson Fabrics sold to the Shade Store, and I think that was what it was called. Yes, Shade Store. And they have a couple of locations around the U.S. When I read that it was sold in 2021, I thought, oh, this sounds like kind of a corporate move to consolidate, to cut expenses, to whatever they need to do to increase the bottom line, and kind of one of these typical moves that you hear about. But the reasons they cite for doing so, and the way they've handled the closing with severance, with working with state and regional regulators and officials so that the employees can get moved to another location or find some other work in the area. It sounds like they're handling this well. And so I give them the benefit of the doubt. And the reason they give for closing the factory, is because there was just a shortage of skilled labor. And that makes sense in a town of 700, especially these days where fewer people are just staying in small towns. We kind of have images like this of the stereotypical dying small town. This is dramatic, but if you look at Black Duck today as compared to when I was young, you might not see this necessarily, but what you will see is a real quiet main street. And while quiet can be good, that's why you go to a small town, because you don't want the noise of a city. I mean quiet in like too quiet, like when I was a kid growing up. And by the way, here's the Anderson Fabrics factory outlet. It's a store that also employed a handful of people that will also be closing downtown. Downtown used to have a Wells Fargo, and when I was really and that left in the last 10 years. They had a pharmacy that left in the last 10 years or so. When I was young there, they had a clothing store, they had a jeweler. Um, I think they even had a TV repairman and an electronics retailer. My parents grew up in Black Duck. When they were there, they had a car dealership in town. They met back in the 70s, and I grew up there in the 90s. Like, it was a very different time back then. Small towns were more local and circular and cellular, if that's the right term there, where things were more you did everything in that one little area. Like I said, you would get your jewelry there, your groceries there, your TV there, even your car there. Whereas in recent years, people have driven further away to the county seat, the largest city in the county. I think this happened all across rural America. The Heck, when I was little, I remember there being a county fair that would come through and set up all their portable rides. That no longer happens in Black Duck. That long ago ended. Now everyone goes to Bemidji, which is the largest city in the county, and people from the other small towns the size of Black Duck go to Bemidji. So Bemidji has it all now, and everyone travels a half hour to an hour, however far, to get to Bemidji, to shop at the Target or the Walmart, to buy a car, to buy a television, to do their banking, etc. And so, with there being fewer things in each of these towns, it's no wonder it's harder for an established company that requires skilled employees, whether it be with computers or design or engineering or whatever that might be. It's harder to get those people to come live in a town like Black Duck, or at least in the area, so that they would work at this factory. So the factory is going to close in April. And that just got me thinking, like projecting into the future, like what's going to happen to small towns like Black Duck, like all the countless other ones across the U.S. and maybe other countries as well, if people just go to the county seat or if they just order from Amazon. And there's just very little reason for people to live in a place like Black Duck if they prefer to live in a place that offers more closer by. Well, you extrapolate and you say, well, if Black Duck had, 800 people 10 years ago and now they've got 700, which I think is approximately true, well, then is it just going to keep dwindling down to nothing? Well, no, because there's always going to be logging there. There's always going to be farmers in the area, and I assume there'll be other businesses. There's tourism, right? There's a lot of fishing and hunting, and I know this is actually, you can't tell, of course. This is a big sports store. So you've got like live bait and tackle and guns for hunting and self-defense and all of that there. And it's actually a pretty popular store. People who drive up, so this is Highway 71, it branches north to 72, and then it keeps going northeast to 71 up to up to International Falls, and then if you go this way north, it's going to go up to Baudette, and that's Lake of the Woods. So people pass through Black Duck as well. So there's tourism. People pass through. People stay up there to do the recreational things, and then of course there's the industry around there with the logging and the farming. But there's also a resurgence for rural life in the U.S., and this is happening for a few reasons. One, people are leaving big cities in the last 5 years, especially because ever since, and this is very true in Minnesota, where we had the riots around George Floyd. In 2020, COVID lockdowns were especially hard in cities. Crime went up across the country in these cities, again, especially in Minnesota. School performance went down, and prices have gone up, right? Rents and so forth. So you can reduce crime, you can get better education, arguably, and you can live cheaper, and you can buy some land if you leave the city and move to a rural area. Now, this isn't just attractive because it's possible. It's also attractive. Well, it's not just attractive because it's safer and sought after. It's also becoming fashionable and possible. And by that I mean people are kind of digging the traditional life, the trad life, and who knows if that's just a fad. But it seems like there's more people that are turning their heads to that way of life, young people, young couples. But secondly, remote work. So I have one friend, for example, who graduated, and she and her husband are professionals. They were in a larger city, but now they're back in Black Duck because he's a software developer and he can work wherever, and there's very fast internet where they live in Black Duck, high speed, of course. So he can work there, and on his salary, you can have a very nice house and land and live really well up there in a small town in rural Minnesota. And there's also people with money in the city that want to buy land in rural parts. So I think for all these reasons, I'm about out of time here. I think we could see a resurgence of rural life while also seeing signs of it struggling. I think we'll have a balance here.